welcome to my channel where we talk about cool cars, cool technology, and alternative fuels. Welcome back to the shop. Over the past few months, I've been working on the truck here, F100. The badge on the side there. A few modifications, nothing too serious, nothing really mechanical up top anyways. But a lot of just kind of creature comforts and features and things like that that I've added to it. Start with the balsa wood box there. That is a temporary housing for some of the electronics I added. That houses a microcontroller and a couple of motor controllers. One for the heater fan and one actually for the dome light to fade the dome light on and off. And the microcontroller monitors basic engine parameters like the temperature, oil pressure, tachometer, and I believe that's it. So pretty basic box there. It is hooked up, of course, to the circuitry it needs to be able to control the dome light, the blower motor, and to read the engine's parameters. But it's connected to a microcontroller underneath the dash and another one behind the seat over a CAN bus network. If you remember or have seen the video on the town car from last year, I was kind of playing around with CAN bus. I just had two nodes, one at the back of the car, one underneath the dash, and it by far worked the best out of I2C, serial. CAN bus worked the best, so that's the communication I went here. No serial, no I2C, just, well, a tiny bit of SPI, but everything else CAN bus. And the SPI is actually on the other side of the CAN bus network, so you've got the CAN bus network between modules and then SPI connection between the little board. I think it's an MCP 2515 interpreting the CAN bus signals, and then an SPI network to the microcontroller. But for all intents and purposes, CAN bus, got canified 55 Ford here. So moving along, I talked a little bit about some of the mechanical stuff. Can't really see it because it's underneath the truck, but this is about all you can see of it. These are just some relays there. I didn't, everything, you'll notice everything is kind of put together on this truck with trying to drill as few holes as possible. I'm not a big fan of drilling holes, especially on something this old that you're drilling metal that's really hard to replace. And so that's why those are just kind of hung there on the firewall. But one of those relays controls the overdrive. This is, as you can see from the badge on the front there, the newly added badge is an overdrive truck. And that means that it does not mean that it is an automatic transmission. I think you could get the automatic in 56, but this truck has the Borg-Warner 3-speed overdrive transmission, and I think it's called an R11. So there's a transmission, a tail housing with an overdrive planetary gear set type setup in there. Really kind of crazy, interesting mix of automatic with the planetary gear set and a stick shift transmission, and it shifts about as crazy as you think it would. You can shift. It's a 3-speed, but you can have 6 total gear ratios, but you only ever use 4 or 5 of them. It's pretty interesting, and I don't claim to know everything there is to know about it, but it's not been working in this truck for a long time because I couldn't find any information on how it worked. Finally found some information, found a guy that could help me out and figure out how it worked and explain it to me. And then when I went and did the electrical stuff, I hooked up a big giant solenoid on the side of the transmission. Finally hooked that solenoid up and repaired it. It was mechanically jammed, so I had to take it all apart, rebuild it. So now that's working. So that's kind of the big mechanical thing. Now the truck can go freeway speeds, no problem. The only other mechanical thing are the wheels down here in the front. The front wheels were out of balance, and so it was like you're jackhammering going down a freeway. I didn't know what that was. Thought it was all kinds of suspension stuff. Kind of went through everything. I was like, those wheels are missing some weights, aren't they? So I took it in, sure enough. The wheels were out of balance. So as you can see in here, we have a sort of classic looking dash in the sense that it's not the cluster that was in it from quite a few years ago now with the other video on this truck. It's the original bezel with original piece of glass, but behind it is just a screen. That is a screen that that has projected on it a picture of what the original dashboard would have looked like. So the kind of the design is just a picture that's on a screen behind the original metal perimeter here, and then everything else is animated. So I've got, you know, the needles and gauges and information, as you can see, all digitally done. The entire thing is digital. Even got some little turn signal animations there. Thought that was pretty nifty. One, because the other dash did not have provisions for turn signals. It would kind of get annoying. Do I have my turn signal on or not? Actually, speaking of turn signals, this is new too. It's something that didn't know could be done. I figured I would give it a shot. This is a retrofit from a 1956 truck. The turn signals were optional in 55, but they're not sold. The switch is not sold. So took the one from a 56, and I think I just had to drill out a hole back here and then drill a couple holes to hold the switch in. So that's a nice little retrofit there. So on the dash, you've got dummy lights too, which is pretty nice. You got the door dummy lights. Of course, the driver door is open. Engine's off, so we got oil pressure light. Below the oil pressure light is a warning light for over temperature, which is kind of nice. When you're driving along, this truck is pretty rough, so being able to read the gauges accurately on a glance is not always as easy as it sounds. So you've got below that a warning dummy light for the temperature, and then below the door light is a dummy light for the headlights, which I would show you, but the headlights don't work when the key is in the accessory position where it is right now. Switches. Nothing too crazy on the switches. However, this truck has delay wipers. One of the things that I liked in the Lincoln was the delay wiper setup I had, but I didn't really want to change the switch to, you know, something that didn't look right in the truck. So actually hidden down here is just a momentary push button switch that used to be the horn before I fixed the real horn button in the center of the steering wheel. You just turn the wipers on the low, and they'll come on whenever. They may actually come on right now. Nope, you gotta have the key on. I don't want to turn the key on, by the way, because if you know anything about old points and electronic ignition systems, they really don't like to be left on for a long time, and we're filming and everything. But you would just turn that on, give it a push, and that's a very long delay, and another push is a little bit shorter, and so on and so forth. And there's 4 delays, and of course you got high speed too. Then when you shut it off, everything just goes back to off, and you can switch it back to low, and it presumes until you hit the button that you actually want low speed. Light switch, nothing crazy there. You've got an aftermarket looking switch there. That switch is for the overdrive. However, this is not, I know a lot of people with the Borg Warner overdrives, they'll do a toggle switch, flip the toggle switch, overdrive on, toggle switch off, overdrive off. This is actually a little bit different. I guess now would be a good time to introduce how this interfaces with the transmission. Underneath the dashboard here, not sure if you can really see that, it's going to be low light, but you can probably see what looks to be a fuse box with, and trust me, the wiring looks better in person. It looks like a disaster on camera because of the depth perception. It looks like a big ball instead of nicely tied up. But underneath there, behind that fuse box, is a underdash control board, which is kind of the main board, as you might, it's almost like the IPDM for Nissans, I think is what they call it. Intelligent fuse box. Got the fuses, and then behind that is a relay control board, and on top of that is actually the microcontroller that controls those relays, which do most of the vehicle functions: lights, horn, start, ignition, all that good stuff. That's tied on the CAN bus network, of course, to the one behind the seat and the one underneath the hood, and that is what interfaces all of these switches, but especially the overdrive switch with the vehicle functions. This switch is actually an enable switch. So off is lockout, no overdrive. On tells the computer to monitor vehicle speed, and above 33 miles an hour is where I have it set, which seems to be pretty good. Overdrive is engaged, regardless of the gear you're in, but most of the time you're in third by that point. Once you see that you're above 33, you can take your foot off the gas and push the clutch in, and the transmission will shift for you into overdrive. Then below 20 miles an hour, it will disengage overdrive so that you're ready to take off in first gear. Again, you don't have to remember to hit the switch, and if you don't, trying to take off in first overdrive, which is like trying to take off in second gear in a normal stick shift transmission, if that makes any sense. And there's one other function of this. You can flick it down and flick it back up again, because vehicle speed is read through GPS. It's not read off the transmission because there was no vehicle speed sensor on this transmission. It was just easier to put in a little GPS module that's actually right to the side of the camera. So it's read off of GPS, so in case you're in a tunnel or a lot of tree cover or somewhere where there's not GPS signal, you're not totally stranded or stuck, you can flick the switch and it just goes into manual mode, which is switch off, off, switch on, engage the overdrive. So that is the complexities of the overdrive system in this truck. Choke, self-explanatory, nice old school cable right to the carburetor, the way it should be. And if you're wondering about, I said about drilling holes, this is actually for the throttle cable. There'd be a cable here, a high idle cable, so that you could start the truck up, pull it, and it would rev the engine up. This is an Edelbrock 500 CFM carburetor, and like most carburetors now, when you pull the choke, there's a high idle piece that gets engaged with the choke, so you don't have to have the two cables. So I found it a nice convenient place to put that. 12 volt outlet, controls over here for the blower, the heater blower motor thing. Things to note with that are, this is a 2-position switch, just off, low, and high. Now, nothing crazy about that. One, you know, this is the way it would have been from the factory. However, when this is an aftermarket motor in here, and I don't know if this is the way it was from the factory or not, but low speed is very slow and high speed is lickety-split fast. So I decided, I like a little bit more control over my speeds, so I wanted to leave the old school, you know, 2-position switch there, but I programmed the truck rather, to send this command over to the under hood control module, and that just selects one of two PWM settings on the motor controller that then drives this motor. So all I have to do, laptop, plug it in, say, hey, I want the high speed to be a little slower, the low speed to be a little faster, and I can change the settings, and now I've got it dialed in where low is actually a reasonably low speed, high is high speed. So that covers the instruments and electronics in here. Now let's take a look kind of where really all the, if you think the gauge cluster is at least the magic, where all the magic happens. This phone here is actually integral to the truck. You can see it's plugged into a little adapter here, and at some point I'll probably just run one cable instead of having the cable adapter and so forth. That can be done fairly simply, but this phone is actually driving the gauge cluster, and you can see the image of the gauge cluster on it. Now there's a couple reasons for that. You remember the Lincoln, if you've seen that video, I have digital gauge clusters and they're driven by just boards, circuit boards in the back. This allows me to have touchscreen capability. Of course, the dash is, the actual screen is recessed into the dash, so I can't touch the screen. But I can touch the phone, and I can bring up, with Android's picture-in-picture, I can bring up Google Maps. If I had like forward-facing and rear-facing cameras, I could bring those up. This particular software I'm using here actually has built-in navigation, all kinds of things that it allows me to do. I can play radio, which is also an option on this software. So lots of options that the touchscreen allows me to do, and that's what that setup is for. So behind the seat, like I was talking about, there appears to be lots of blinking lights and such. There's insulation and all kinds of things. But the box down here that I'm not sure how good it looks on camera, but with the blue and red lights, houses several microcontrollers that do things such as supplying the phone with the correct data and information so that it can drive the dashboard. And this also is the security box, as well as, of course, a Wi-Fi router for what we'll get to in just a moment. It also houses a couple of relays. Those relays are to turn on circuits that are important for booting the truck up. So like main power on, and I believe also turning the radio on so that the radio in accessory mode can be switched on independently of the truck if you want that feature, which is something that I didn't do in the Lincoln and something I decided I wanted to do. So this box, I said it was a security box, I'll explain that a little bit. It's connected to just kind of an aftermarket security system, nothing too crazy there, but there's an interface between the little aftermarket security box, comes with a key fob, and the truck, and that's the interface right there is the box. That way I can program different things like checking to make sure that there's actually a reason to have an alarm condition, or do I want to, this truck doesn't have electric locks, but it uses the lock command to disable the truck so that even if you have a key, even if you try to, hotwire it, doesn't work. Different things like that, so kind of a combination between what you would expect from a key fob alarm system and being able to connect those different outputs to things that I actually want them to drive in the truck. A couple more things in here. Up here, above the rearview mirror, are a couple of cameras. See if I can leave my hand in front of the, oh yeah, there it is. A couple of cameras. Those cameras are blind spot cameras. They are in 3D printed housings, just so that they can be exactly angled to my height. Alrighty, so last thing to check out on the truck are the actual cameras themselves. These are just small, same kind of cameras that are in the Lincoln. Of course, remember in the Lincoln, the bumper overhangs from the car and the cameras are in the overhangs of the bumper. This bumper doesn't overhang and the fenders are really wide, so I decided to put the cameras back here instead. They're in 3D printed housings with a little plexiglass shield in front of them. The actual cameras themselves are, I believe, a Sony 8 megapixel, that sounds right, camera, hooked to a Raspberry Pi Zero W, so wireless Raspberry Pi Zero. Nothing too crazy there. They're just running a little small camera streaming program that streams the data over Wi-Fi and then goes to the cameras up in there, or sorry, the screens up in there, and the video that you see here is displayed up there in real time. Alrighty, just want to go ahead and demonstrate the key fob. I think that's the only thing I didn't really demonstrate. It does have passive keyless entry, which means I can walk up to the truck and it boots up and is ready for me. When I'm walking up, turns on the lights, stuff like that. I do still have it set up, of course, with the metal key because I'm a fan of the metal key and putting the key in and really turning it on. But if I wanted to, I can actually just take this key, cut it, put a knob on the end of it, and all I got to do is have the key with me, jump in the truck, push the start button, and we're ready to go. So I can unlock the truck manually, of course, and you'll see that the lights turn on down below. I can lock the truck, and it honks the horn, locks and shuts everything off. Of course, like I said, this truck doesn't have manual locks, or sorry, it doesn't have electronic locks, it's got manual locks. When I say lock and unlock, I really mean enable the thing to work or disable the thing to work. I like it honking the horn and stuff so that it sounds like it's got an alarm system in it just to deter anybody from messing with it or anything like that. Same thing happens basically if I go around and get close to the signal with the passive keyless turned on. It'll turn the lights on just like that. And I can jump in, turn the key, fire it up. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed the truck and all the little oddities, features, and creature comforts that I've been tinkering with over the summer.